order. Meeting of the Board of Selectmen. We'll rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great. So we have provided in our packets this evening the minutes from the August 14th meeting. Barring any corrections, do I hear a motion for approval?
Move approval.
Motion made by Selectman Keen. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Seconded by Selectman Nobley. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none. Minutes pass. So this evening we have before us a continuation of a tradition, I think, that I hope extends long after we are gone, and that is we've begun inviting different boards and committees in the community to come before the Board of Selectmen to provide an update, as per our charter requires, an annual update on their activities, and kind of just letting us know what their goals for the year are, any needs, any plans, any support they may need from the Board of Selectmen. And so this evening we've invited the North Andover Youth and Recreation Council, and we have their chairman, Kevin Driscoll, joining us this evening to provide us that update. So Kevin, if you wouldn't mind approaching the mic.
Sure.
And telling us what you guys are up to.
Great. Thank you all for having me here to represent the board. I should say that I'm active in the youth center. I have 3 daughters, a senior, a 6th grader, and a 5th grader, who all participate in the youth center as a counselor, and then participants in summer fun and the youth center as members. We currently have 8 members. I think we're going to be a complete board tonight, according to the agenda, so we'll have 9. The board is made up of Peter Breen, Terry Holland, Andrew Furman, Holly Williams, Sandy Savoy, Maureen Ferris, and Dan Moore, and myself. I'd also like to thank John Lenhoff, who served on the board for many years and stepped off at the end of this year. We're made up, obviously, of seasoned leaders of the community, as well as current and past parents of youth center participants. One thing to consider when doing appointments for the board that Chris and I spoke about was that obviously we want board members to be able to be fully participating in board meetings, and that has not always happened in recent years. So I think we're square on that now. But we have set meetings, and sometimes they can't meet. So that's the one big thing. Obviously, we want parents and community members who are invested in moving the youth center mission forward. The youth center offers adventure programs, student-run programs, social and emotional support services for students and their families, social recreational programs that offer personal growth experiences, as well as services which support the underserved youth in our community. Obviously, the primary focus of our programs is geared to the youth, specifically middle school and high school age youth. However, during the summer months, we do run a number of programs geared to our elementary school youth. And the center is also open during the week to our community seniors for walking and social interactions in the center. And it's also open to a number of local community groups as well. So while many in the town see the youth center as a programming center for 6th through 8th graders, it is much more. And that is one of our goals as a board, to make that known to the community, that we are serving more than just this group of middle school students. In the past year to that, in 2016-2017, we served over 3,000 youth in the community. We had 621 full memberships, and looking forward to this coming year, we've added a slew of new clubs and programs, including a Boys to Men group, North Andover High School Leadership Group, a kickboxing program, a weight training program, Zumba and yoga, archery and rocketry clubs, a new girls empowerment program, a mountain biking club, and we're adding camping trips. I'd just like to say that we are extremely grateful to Rick and Demi and the entire staff at the Youth Center for leading the youth and recreation services of the community, and also grateful to our ongoing relationship with Frank Keneally and the Herman Board. One last update, and then I'll open it up to questions if you have any. The Youth Needs Assessment, which is being run in collaboration with the town, the school department, and Merrimack College. We anticipated that that would be complete at the end of this past school year. They ran into some scheduling issues with focus groups in the community. So Caitlin Kirkle, who is a town resident, former town resident, graduate of the high school and participant of the youth center, is running this assessment for the college. And she anticipates the wrap-up of focus groups in September, October, and results of the assessment to the board sometime before the new year. A lot of good stuff going on.
Can you have older residents of town join on and all that kind of fun? You
Yes.
got some great things going on there.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
I really appreciate the opportunity to support the board. And one of the things that Regina and I have been talking about as we're interviewing members is really trying to figure out how we can bring best practices that each of the individual boards are doing across all to help you be more effective. So keep it up and keep the
Absolutely.
communication rolling with us.
And I appreciate the outreach, too, and our being able to present. That's definitely a good thing. So, good.
So you have 9 members. Are you looking for us to steer, not necessarily members, but volunteers your way to help you with your efforts?
We can always use volunteers. They should check in with Rick. The board right now, I guess we see ourselves right now primarily as a sort of an advisory board to Rick, who's been here for many, many years. One of the things that we are starting to talk about is a transition plan with him. Long-term goal of the board is to work with him on building that out. But in the short term, really, we are there to support what he needs, and sort of play devil's advocate with him and be a sounding board for some of the ideas that come across. But I think we have a very good, we complement each other on the board. I think we cross at a number of places. So we have some longtime residents, Peter, Terry, and then some newer families that have come in. So. Sure, absolutely.
Thanks.
Okay, great, thanks.
Thank you, Kevin. And so that's under communication announcements. We also have an election update from our town clerk, Joyce Bradshaw, who I think is hiding behind the podium.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Although 2018 seems a long way away, it's just around the corner, so I thought I would just do a brief update of what will be coming up for elections. We do not have any elections in 2017 scheduled, so that's a good thing. The next election that we're looking toward is the annual town election, which is the last Tuesday in March, and we have 2 selectmen seats open, Selectman DeCollegiero and Selectman Valancourt, 2 school committee positions for 3 years, Andrew McDevitt and David Teresi. Town moderator is up for election. There's 1 seat, and that's a 3-year term. And the housing authority is still something that's up in the air. They have legislation pending that will change how some housing authority members are elected, so we still do not have an update for that. So after, and the town election calendar and campaign finance calendars will be going on the website. I usually make nomination papers available the Monday after Thanksgiving, but certainly if somebody really would like them now, it's totally acceptable. But all these schedules and any help any potential candidates need, they certainly only have to make a phone call or drop by the office. The next scheduled election in September is a state primary election. We still don't have a date for that because of the time that it falls. It has been moved in the last several elections to the first Thursday in September, which is an odd day, but we have to do that in order to have sufficient time to get the absentee ballots and have the ballot finalized for the November election. Then we have the November 6th state election that has governor and constitutional offices, state rep, state senator, Congress is also on that ballot. Just to clarify something, we've been getting phone calls. We are not in the 5th congressional district. We are in all of North Andover is in the 6th congressional district, whose current congressman is Seth Moulton. So just to clarify that. And also wanted to give you a little bit of an early voting update. I'm on the state task force to study early voting. We have much legislation that's pending that's really important to us. We had 7,192 early voters in North Andover for the November election. That's a lot of envelopes, and it's a lot, and when you picture 7,100 envelopes, it had to be opened, ballots taken out, and put through the machines. That is a daunting task. So we're looking for several things, and as the legislation gets forward, hope to have your support to eliminate the envelopes, to be able to just deposit the early voted ballots right into a regular voting machine, and also, and Selectman DeColigiero probably knows from his experience in Methuen, the use of poll pads were very effective, so we definitely will be looking to that. It's an electronic means to have the voter come in. If they have any kind of driver's license or ID, they just scan it right through, and the database is updated. And also, we're working very closely with the Office of the Secretary of State to have that information that if you use the poll pads to be able to be automatically uploaded into the state VRIS system. To put those 7,000 voters in the system took about 3 minutes apiece. So you can just imagine the very late hours and what 7,000 envelopes look like that had to be put in alphabetical street order. So that would be a huge thing to help us. We probably won't be looking at 7,000 early voters, but it was very popular with the public, and that would make it very much more manageable to be able to do that. So we're definitely looking into the poll pads, and as soon as we get some details on the legislation, we'll let you know, and would certainly appreciate the board's support to be able to do that. And it also would cut down the need to have huge amounts of staff. We also have 3 different ballots, so it's very complicated to make sure that the voter gets the proper ballot. If they were all the same, you'd just be able to put them in a pile and do that. So, anybody have?
A tremendous job you did during that November election. I mean, it was like the perfect storm of events. So first of all, it was a historic election. You had the early voting, and you had the opening of Town Hall, where people were coming in to see that as well. So there was
yes.
a lot going on at that one time.
The doors opened at 8 o'clock, and the first voters were right behind us, and the town manager was great about helping us with logistics, because you had no idea what to expect either of the building or what this process would be, let alone to have 35% of your voters come out, and all the people that just stepped to the plate to help. You had no anticipation of needing as many people as you did, because it was, but everybody just always pitches in and helps, and it makes it happen. Or the people that showed up on election day to feed those 7,100 ballots through, we had people that just came up and said, could we help in any way? And we handed them a letter opener and say, well, just go to it. And, it's just a very giving community that everybody just looks and wants to help, so.
Well, thank you.
So, Joyce, for the North Andover Housing Authority seat, what exactly is the circumstances around pending legislation? So a law has been passed, just not signed, or it's being worked on right now, or?
The legislation's being worked on with the state has a task force, but unfortunately they haven't formed themselves. But we've been working very, very diligently with the elections committee to make sure that some of and a very detailed early voting election analysis that we did that showed them. And the legislators like to see numbers. They like to see factual things of exactly what was involved and how those changes would impact early voting. You may also see same-day voter registrations out there, too. So
I meant specifically, so under the North Andover Housing Authority seat, it says it's awaiting pending election legislation. What does that mean? because we currently have 5 members, is there a law that's been passed and just not signed yet? And what are
What
the
they're
changes
doing
that we
is
could expect?
the House and Senate committees are looking at possible amendments to the law, because a lot of it has to be legislatively changed in order to implement it in the early voting process.
No, the housing authority.
Oh, the housing authority.
Yes, so in the North Andover Housing Authority, it says, your
That's-
last line, pending legislation, or pending election legislation, but it doesn't elaborate, so,
We don't really know. Last year, when it came time right before the election, we received something from the Office of Housing that they were changing the way the Housing Authority members are elected, but nothing has come through. We know that it may be changed so that the elected member has to be a resident of the Housing Authority, but we have seen nothing since the last election, but we know that they are trying to implement something.
Do we have any seats coming up for that? Do we have any terms expiring or that need to be?
We do. Mary Beth Soucy's term will expire next year, and as I said, it was very ambiguous when they came out with the election information about the Housing Authority this past year, and it was a matter because they did not have the regulations in place that we went ahead and the election was conducted the same way we always would with the 5-year term. So we have not seen. It's more regulations and legislation coming from the Department of Housing and Community Development that are looking to change the way Housing Authority members are elected. And finally, they're working with the Elections Division because they came out with these rules and hadn't made sure that they were put into the election laws. That's why we did business as usual.
Mr. Chairman, I'll contact the Secretary and find out exactly any pending legislation, what the impact would be on the election.
thank you. And thank you, Joyce.
Thanks, Joyce.
Thank you.
Okay. So that is it for communications and announcements on the agenda. Are there any other?
Yes, I had something, sorry. Since Selectman Nobley and I have started the sub-appointment committee, working on the sub-appointment committee, I just wanted to share with the public a little bit about how we're conducting ourselves. We've set some goals of being process-oriented, consistent in that process, and transparent with the process. And to that end, I wanted to share this tonight to talk about how we're operating for the sake of transparency. As has been the case always, openings are listed on the town website for the various committees. If you go to the town website, if you're interested in serving in a committee, you can see what the openings are. We are meeting with candidates that have expressed interest the hour before the Selectmen meeting. Each Selectmen meeting, we're spending that time to meet with candidates and talk about their skill set and why they're interested and what they'll bring to the committee. I would point out that we are meeting with new candidates as well as people who are already serving on a committee and are seeking reappointment, which we're doing so that we can understand what the committee is doing and the value they're adding, and it's a process for us to get to know the individuals that are already giving great impact to the town that we appreciate. And it helps us to be better advocates for what the committees are doing and provide any help that the committees might be seeking from the Board of Selectmen. So we are thoroughly enjoying that process and learning a lot about the great things that folks are doing as they serve on these committees. And another thing that Chris mentioned is our plans to develop a set or pull together a set of best practices that we are gleaning as we talk to the various committees, so we can share them with the full set of committees so they can learn from each other, because that communication might not be happening. That's, I guess, one of the roles we think we can play, is helping to share the best practices that the various groups are doing. And also putting together a welcome packet, if you will, for new committee members to help them get up and running and contributing to their committee quickly. And that's something that we will share with this board, if not on this agenda, at another agenda. We're putting together a draft with input from various groups, and we'll share with you all for input as we progress that. And hopefully that will help people just be more effective quickly and feel more comfortable as they join your committees. Anything to add to that?
Other than it's really been exciting to see the engagement of folks, just kind of their enthusiasm, their expertise, and we have just phenomenal folks that are eager to help and support our community. And I also want to thank Selectman Keen for your incredible organization, because it's great. It really helps us be efficient in this process, because there are so many different components that make our town work that people want to volunteer. And so, thank you, and we want more folks hopefully to step up and get engaged. I hope that's part of the process here. It's our committees across the town.
I love the idea of the informational packet and just learning about board procedure and board collegiality and so forth like that. The Finance Committee, when I served on that, we did go to a training session that discussed just that, and I think it's marvelous that you guys want to bring that to all the other boards.
Yeah.
But I do want to say, though, that we did the same on prior boards as far as interviewing both sets of groups.
I know you probably did, but
I love what you're adding to it, and I think it's great. And I think, if you could put a really terrific, welcoming package, that maybe it should be shared with all different boards, not just our appointments. I think it's wonderful.
Yeah, I think the goal of the packet was to be like the level above each committee's welcome letter. I know I've looked at the various committees, and if you'll go on the website, you'll see different information. And I think there's different packets that different committees have to welcome their new members. And this is intended to be maybe something that sits on top. And we would certainly have, under this, there's expected to be a section with committee specifics, and we would plan to talk to all the committees to ask them if they have such a thing, and if not, it might make sense to create it, and so on. But yeah, I think especially for people who are new to serving on town committees, and that's, this is obviously a new thing for me, and I would like to help other people get up to speed quickly because that's one of the daunting things about joining a committee. You don't know how they work necessarily, and
Well, there's a whole language to government
Yes,
that the public
exactly.
doesn't know. The acronyms, and it just rolls off members' tongues, and everyone's like, "What does that mean? I've never heard of that." So I think it's a great idea, and again, learning about protocol and rules and regulations and open meeting laws that I think it empowers the group to have more information. It's great.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect. Yeah. Any other announcements?
I have-
The farmers market continuing to go strong.
Indeed.
What, 5 more weeks? 5 more Sundays?
October 8th. 5? Is that 5?
Maybe, I don't know.
I don't- yeah,
didn't do the
I think
math,
that's
but it
five.
sounds
Who's
like 5 to me. But
Um,
continuing to be a great event every Sunday, and it really is an event every Sunday, and people show up and have a great time down there, and so, yeah.
We've already
Come on
clocked
down.
500 volunteer hours from people who have come to the market to help set up breakdown. So a significant chunk being, Mr. Valancourt and the miles he's putting on that truck, driving back and forth. So
Not to jinx it, no rainouts, have you?
No?
it has
It's been
become the
amazing.
joke. The joke is people want rain now at this point, because the
They
joke
need
is
a
that
little
it's
break.
all just one giant blur of beautiful days. So everyone's going to the beach. Actually, we'd get more people, I think, if there was rain, which would be even neater.
That's true,
So.
or cloudy skies anyways, yeah.
So yeah, that's
I have sort of a pre-announcement. The North Andover Women's Club will be holding a fashion show Friday, October 13th at the Stevens Estate. And it is an event, as I think you all know, that the club basically raises money and gives it away to good local causes. But there will be fashion for women and fashion for men, and we do have a few what we like to call celebrity men who will be modeling the clothes, but we'll save all of that information. We have had a few volunteers, but it should be a really fun event. And so the tickets are $50 each, and it should be a really fun night. I won't reveal who all the models for the women come from the club, but we do have a few well-known models from town of the guys, so we'll keep that until we have our big announcement.
Do you have a designated cause for this
Because
one?
we don't want to.
Big secret, you don't want to reveal that.
Is there a designated cause, or you're going to reveal it, or?
There's a few things being floated around. I don't want to announce them, but it will be a good North Andover cause, and it will at our next meeting, we'll decide. But it's always something good for the town, and we hope that people continue to see our worthy efforts, so. Mark that down, October 3rd, Friday the 13th in October.
Mr. Chairman, can I note the passing of Bill Hanson?
Oh, yes.
A member of our Board of Library Trustees for, I don't even know the number of years, but quite a bit of time. I think he was one of the original members of the Stevens Estate Board as well, which dates back nearly 20 years. Passed away recently, someone who's given a tremendous amount, sort of one of those understated folks, extremely intelligent and passionate person that a lot of people may not know, but gave countless hours to very important projects and departments around town in the Stevens Estate and the Library Board of Trustees. So he gave a lot to the community.
You're right, yeah. He served his country in the Navy. As you said, an extremely intelligent man. And you're right, he will be sadly missed. But thank you, because that also reminds me to mention that Reverend Daley, who's retired from St. Paul's Church, who was also a military chaplain, very involved in the Patriotic Observance Committee and all our patriotic events with opening and closing blessings. Truly wonderful, wonderful man. Just one of the most collegial. No matter what your faith was, he was your friend, and he is going to be really sadly missed. Wonderful, wonderful man. So another loss to the town.
Both. Absolutely. Any other communications or announcements from the board? Moving on then to consent items. We have the first item on the this section of the agenda is a vote on a letter in response to national events involving race. About 2 weeks ago, there was an instance in this country where we saw two groups clash and one group really espouse some of the really nastier things when it comes to public discourse and race and relations. And so I know that amongst peers in town government, we talked about the impact that we felt, and I know that we all have social media and saw the impact that people in our community felt. And so after speaking with some of our colleagues on the school committee who are our peers in local government, our town moderator, we had talked about the idea of submitting a letter in unity, just showing that we're committed to, I think, the concept of tolerance, respect, basically the raised values which our school committee has championed for about 10 years. And so I know that the board had just met, and so we did not have an opportunity to have that meeting, but several members spoke, and I know Selectman Spinelli and I were able to, I think, hammer out a letter that succinctly expressed some feelings that we asked the school committee to actually take up, and we have several members of the school committee here this evening, David Terzi, Helen Picard, and Chairman Amy Mabley, who has very kindly come this evening to talk about the discussion the school committee had and the final letter she produced, and she's, again, very kindly taken some time away from her family. I know tonight is her daughter's 10th year, Vanessa's turning 10 this evening, and so Amy has kindly taken time away, so I'll try to get this done while the sun is still up, if however quickly that can be. So Amy, if you wouldn't mind approaching the podium. So again, Amy Mabley, of the chairwoman of the North Andover School Committee.
That's correct, yes, and so I'll be grilling pizzas as soon as I leave here. But, so what Mr. DiCologero said is exactly accurate. We had our school committee meeting and discussed the letter, and the big thing for us is this is the 10th anniversary of the raised values that we've talked about, and our whole community embraces and talks about in school, with students, with teachers. And those values, again, came together over 10 years ago, but before that, there was a committee that formed with teachers, community members, parents, called Building a Respectful Community Committee, and they're the ones who put all this stuff together, and that was started mostly because of some activities that they were seeing with kids interacting with each other, various things. And so this whole situation that we saw in the news and the letter that we talked about, it just made sense to us that this was a perfect opportunity to celebrate and remind everyone that we, for a long time, have been working on making sure that our community is inclusive, caring, responsible, service-oriented, all the raised values, which, if people don't know, are respect, of course, I'm going to forget them now, achievement, inclusion, service, and empathy. So we discussed the letter, and then we didn't want to sit there and rewrite it as a group. So Ms. Picard and I took what was already prepared and just made a couple of small changes to include some of the raised values, and that's the letter you have.
I
So-
think you did a great job with it.
Yes, very good.
Just
Very good.
hit all the right notes.
Perfect.
Yeah, thank you both. You did a great job.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, so-
we all are supportive of participating. It's a nice opportunity to participate with your board as well, and make a statement to the community.
It's a funny thing, in other communities, you can just have a mayor or a governor or just an independent person just go up and express these thoughts as quickly as they think of them. And so even a simple task like this requires, I think, coordination that in order to maintain the integrity of the open meeting law requires bouncing them off of different boards and meetings. And so, so we keep talking about this letter and we've not yet read it. And so I will ask the clerk if she
Very
wouldn't
good.
mind reading it
Thank you.
into the record. And thank you to the school committee for your guidance and cooperation on this, and to the moderator for his leadership in helping extend to that part of town government, that once-a-year activity that he performs.
Okay,
So-
so here it is. It is with love and respect for our neighbors that we feel compelled to formally and unequivocally go on record as leaders of our community to condemn the bigotry, racism, violence, and hate that was displayed in Charlottesville, Virginia, and elsewhere. We want the people of the community we have been elected to represent to know that in the face of tumult near and far, North Andover will remain steadfast in its defense of tolerance and its commitment to the raised values of respect, inclusion, and empathy, a place open to and accepting of all races, religions, creeds, genders, and orientations. Hate has no home in our great country.
Thank you. And so, Mr. Moderator, I don't know if you wouldn't mind approaching the podium. So again, we tried to coordinate the 11 elected officials in the community, and so, Mr. Moderator, thank you for
Thank you.
helping.
Thank you very much. My name is Mark DeSalvo, 179 Coventry Lane. Although I ostensibly lead the legislative part of our government, I don't speak for it. I speak only for myself at this moment in time. But I think it's exactly an obligation and a responsibility of those of us who are the principal community leaders in our town to express as has been done. It's interesting to me that the foundation of that part of government which I have responsibility for is so closely allied with the notion of free speech. And we ought to celebrate free speech, even that speech that we don't like. But what's most important is to recognize that we, as has been done here, and hopefully will be done with pending our signatures, the recognition that we don't have to abide that speech, other people's expression of hate and intolerance. That specifically we as individuals can call out those who are nationalists, who are secessionists, who are racist, who are misogynist, who are inappreciative of gender equality and sexual orientation. That it is our responsibility as community leaders to call it out specifically that this is not North Andover, that you are welcome to speak, but we have no obligation to hear, and we have an obligation to protest and be contemptible of that speech. And I am delighted to add my name and signature. Thank you.
Thank you. And so with that, because this is before us this evening, do I hear a motion to accept the letter as?
Mr. Moderator, I'll move that the Board of Selectmen approve the letter regarding national events involving race.
Second.
Motion made by Selectman Valencourt, seconded by Selectman Nobley. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I would just, again, I'd like to say, I think it's a tremendous, that all elected officials in this town came together, and I know we're very, very enthusiastic to sign this letter and to make their thoughts and the raised values known to all. So I want to thank, my fellow elected officials in the town that were willing, and so willing, to step up and do this, and without any hesitation.
I would just like to make just one comment, to sort of an observation from the way that our two authors or co-authored, is that in our way of teaching our children through the respect, it sort of comes back and says we need to also teach ourselves. that we all need to be kind to one another and accepting. So I'm just so pleased it almost did a full circle by you including that in there. Not respect, the raise, which is respect, excuse me, getting my R's mixed up. But I really liked the way that you did that. And I think frankly, I really don't know too many people in our town that would be on the hate side of this issue, which is a good thing, and I guess I care not to know them. But you did a great job again. Thank you.
I would just add, as obviously very proud in being a representative for the folks who speak in this town, but as a parent, this is such a tremendous opportunity to sit down with your children, as I did with this letter, and say, you know, what can you do when you hear this sort of thing, when you see this sort of thing? This is what you can do. This is a great example and opportunity that we can share with our children. So I think those of us who have children particularly feel the power of this individually and personally. So again, it's just an unfortunate circumstance that we are making the most out of to communicate what we believe in. So thank you.
So the motion has been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none. The Board of Selectmen unanimously endorse this letter and its sentiments. So thank you. Thank you again to school committee members. We actually have a hard copy here with the intention of, if you're willing to sign this, as well as the colleagues here at this table sign and Mr. Moderator sign, so that perhaps we can store this with our town clerk after everyone signed on, and it can just be another piece of our town's pretty rich archive history. So thank you, and I'll pass this along this way, only because I see a blue pen in that direction. And so with that, we're on to our next item, which is on the agenda. We have a donation in the amount of $5,000 from the Friends of the North Andover Senior Center for in-control driving course.
Mr. Chair, I think we may have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Tennant?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
If you don't mind, would you mind approaching the mic, please, Mr. Tennant?
The news media would like to have hard copies of this.
Oh, absolutely.
Good.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
And so for folks at home who couldn't hear that, that was a question from the audience about supplying that letter to the news media, which we will absolutely oblige. So thank you. So again, this is next item on the agenda is the acceptance of a donation in the amount of $5,000 from the Friends of the North Andover Senior Center for in-control driving course, or for the, that's how it's worded, but for the in-control driving course. And
Mr. Chairman, there was an interest to have seniors be able to participate in a safe driving class. We're fortunate in town to have a company called In Control. And In Control provides safe driving classes for a lot of young people around the Commonwealth and for public safety folks as well. And we thought it would be important for seniors to have the same opportunity. So we contacted the folks from In Control. They came to the senior center. They engaged a group of seniors. We had maximum capacity of 20. We had 18 people sign up at that first event, 2 sign up very quickly thereafter. So we have 20 seniors who will be participating in this program to learn some safe driving, something we probably should all take at one point or another, and we thought it was important. So I reached out to the Friends of the Council on Aging, and Martha's been gracious enough to volunteer the $5,000, to donate the $5,000 cost to have In Control put on the program at their site at Osgood Landing.
So I didn't even know that this company existed in North Andover. And so it was, when you told me about this, I thought it was a really neat opportunity, and one made all the more neater by the generosity.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. I just wanted to say, the money that we have at the Senior Center for the Friends is the money from Chris and Carol Marshall and the Borderline Running Club for the 4th of July road race. They donate the money to the Friends. So Chris had contacted me about this. I think this is a wonderful training program for seniors.
Oh, thank you.
And it's my pleasure to introduce, donate this money to you. And also, I own a home care agency in town. So this is something that's very close to what I do every day. Families that are struggling with people that need to be retrained or maybe give up their license. So it's a very, very important thing. Thank you.
Well,
Great.
thank you. And so I will entertain the motion right now to we have to actually accept it. We might not want the money, right?
Since I have
We want the money.
Since I have been given the check, I'll make the motion. Mr. Chair, I'll move the,
Check out to in control. I did take it out to the town, and I'm not sure if that's correct. If you need me to change it, I can.
We can work with that. If you accept it for the town, I'll see if they can, they may be able to just take it on.
And if they can't, I can just write you a
Okay,
check.
we'll be fine.
And just to confirm, it is for 5,000, right?
$5,000,
Yes.
yes, correct.
tremendous amount. Mr. Chair, I'll move the Board of Selectmen accept the donation of $5,000 to be used for in-control driving course for the town's senior citizens from the Friends of the North Andover Senior Center.
Motion made by Selectman Valencourt. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Seconded by Selectman Nobley. Any discussion?
Just want to say thank you to the folks at the Borderline Running Club who really put together the road race and created this donation, and that's your participation in the 4th of July. All the folks that did, this is where some of that goes. So it's a wonderful circle back to our town.
Thank you.
Thanks, Martha.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none? Thank you.
Great.
If I can, I know Martha has left, but Martha had also indicated in my conversations with her, she could use some additional members on the Friends and the Council on Aging. So, and part of your process, if you have folks who may be interested in doing that, we can provide them information about what the Friends does and put them in touch with Martha if there's some interest.
We will do that. I think we have a couple of folks that we've interviewed that might be really good candidates for that. Thank you.
Excellent. And so, our next item on the agenda, we actually have a familiar face. You must be getting sick of us. We have the vote, a vote to approve disbursement of $310,000 from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund to Bread and Roses Housing, Inc. for the purchase of 51 Main Street. And I see this evening we have Yesenia with us again. And so Yesenia Gill from Bread and Roses is here this evening to discuss this project.
Good evening. Thank you, Board Chair, Mr. Board Chair, or Chairman, and Board. As Mr. DeCollegiero indicated, my name is Yesenia Gill. I'm the Executive Director of Bread and Roses Housing, and I'm standing here before you excited about another potential collaboration with the town for an affordable homeownership project. It is located at 51 May Street. For those of you who don't know, we are in construction on the same exact street, 70 May Street. We have a project underway, and this particular property became available about 2 or 3 weeks after we started construction. We kept our eye on it and put an offer, and we were fortunate to have an accepted offer on the property. We did meet with the Affordable Housing Trust about a week ago, and they voted unanimously to support this project and to add this project to their affordable housing portfolio. So I am here to respectfully ask for your support for this project in the amount of $310,000, as the memorandum, which is before you, indicates. At sale, about $87,000 of that amount would be returned back to the trust. And with that, I will open it up to questions if you have any about this particular project.
I just want to say, as being the newest member of the Housing Trust, the tremendous job that Bread and Roses does for this. I attended the groundbreaking along with some of my colleagues here. I attended the groundbreaking a couple weeks ago on May Street, where they bought a property, tore it down, and are now building a stick-built home for a needing family, a family in need, which is tremendous. And both of these properties, if we vote to approve this, will be ready by Thanksgiving of this year, right? And
Yes.
so two families will be in their permanent homes for Thanksgiving and for the holidays. So it's a tremendous opportunity, and basically in the same neighborhood as well. They'll be almost across the street from each other. And I think, again, as Yesenia said, we had a meeting last Tuesday, and the board unanimously voted to approve this project. And some of the funding would come from CPA money that we've already had approved, and the rest would be coming from the Housing Trust. So I hope, we all will take that into consideration and support this project. Again, it's a tremendous cause, and it's really keeping a family in North Andover and in an affordable situation. So great partnership with the Housing Trust, with the builders, the Levi family that does a tremendous job, and just everybody involved, Kentucky Bank, everybody involved. They just all go above and beyond to put these properties and make these properties available.
So I appreciate the happy coincidence that the Affordable Housing Trust has been able to secure. I mean, it really is the third house in this little
It
section.
would be
I
the
mean,
third addition to the portfolio right on Main Street, for a total of 4 units. The first
First one
project
was
on Main
a
Street was a
duplex.
duplex, so 4 units on Main Street.
And-
And what it does for that section of town, that neighborhood, it just enhances it greatly. So it's really a win all around. Not only does it help those in need or those who could use a permanent home at a price that they can afford, it helps the other property values as well. It's that part of it I really do like. It's looking good down at that corner, so.
Thank you. I
Down
could
that
not
end.
agree more, and it could not happen without a local partnership, and we've been very fortunate to have the town as well as the Affordable Housing Trust to continuously support our endeavors in the town, so we're excited for another one.
And just one last comment. So the house that is on the corner of May Street that was in really a desperate need of work, there was an elderly woman living in that home, and it was obviously the amount of work was well beyond her capabilities to maintain that home. And when the Bread and Roses purchased that home, that woman was moved basically across the street at McCabe Court and now lives still in the same neighborhood, can see her old property, but is in a much better situation. That home was, for those of us who attended the groundbreak or the ribbon cutting for the home next door, we all looked at that home and said, wow, what's going on there? And, grateful for the Bread and Roses for following up on that, and now that woman is in a much better situation. She really was in dire need of some changes there, so thank you.
And I'm told she's still walking the neighborhood and is happy to see what's happening in her previous home, and we hope to track her down and invite her to the ribbon cutting. But yes, exciting and wonderful things happening in that neighborhood.
So with that, do I hear a motion to
Mr. Chair, I'll
approve the
make a
disbursement?
motion to approve a disbursement of $310,000 from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund to Bread and Roses Housing, Inc. for the purchase of 51 May Street.
Motion made by Selectman Valencourt. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Seconded by Selectman Keen. Any discussion?
Oh, I'm sorry, did I need to go beyond that? Was that sufficient?
It's good enough.
Let me just read that. Okay, no, I think that's okay.
I think that, so motion made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you again.
Thank
It's
you,
really-
Chairman.
it's
Thank you, Board,
Very neat.
for your continued support. Have a good evening.
So next on the agenda is, we have item D, an acceptance of a grant in the amount of $7,500 from the Massachusetts Board of Library Commissioners. Do you have, I don't know if we have anybody here this evening from the library.
Move the Board of Selectmen accept the grant from the Massachusetts Board of Library Commissioners in the amount of $7,500.
Motion made by Selectman Valencourt. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Seconded by Selectman Keen. All in favor?
Aye.
Excellent. So the next item on the agenda, item E, vote on a recommendation of appointment subcommittee to repeal the Constitution and bylaws of the North Andover Patriotic Observance Committee and establish its mission. This was something we discussed at our prior meeting on August 14th. We tabled it so that we could have an opportunity to further notify the Patriotic Observance Committee and let them attend this meeting. I think it's consistent with what, again, we discussed earlier this evening about having our board be as engaged as possible with the appointed boards in this community. And so I will give the floor over to the appointment subcommittee.
Well, I think as we talked about in our last meeting, the necessity really for our town to engage as many folks as possible and in a way that is as transparent and consistent as possible, and making sure that we really fulfill the mission that these subcommittees do, which is support each of the town departments and what we want to do as a community. So this committee, which we all support their actions, their commitment, and we think there may be even a larger mission, and that's one of the reasons why we want to hear from them, is how to expand that. At the same time, we do want to make sure that we have, from a housekeeping standpoint, consistently the process and the transparency of appointments and operation that we have with all the other boards across the town. And so that's what brings us to this point, and Town Manager Mailer provided us with some insight to this so that we can be consistent across all our committees in the town.
Yeah, I think I would just state, I think one of our goals is consistency, in that all the towns and committees are kind of following similar best practices, and this bylaw has a lot of components that I think are not consistent with what we do on other committees. And some of them, well, I think are in conflict with state law, and there's some things that just don't seem to make sense to me. So I guess I'm willing to hear, you know, for example, the charging of fees to be a member, why we're doing that, how much money we're raising, what's being used on, whatever. I have lots of questions, but, you know, when so I don't think it makes sense. I think that the work that the committee does, I reiterate, is fantastic. I think we have absolutely phenomenal, you know, celebrations of, on patriotic holidays and recognition of veterans and active service members, and I think I would love to see that continue, same as it is currently, but I think this bylaw is not necessarily appropriate. So I'm in favor of rescinding the approval of it by previous Board of Selectmen.
So we had talked again last meeting about having the Patriotic Observance Committee discuss this, and I see we have several current and former members, including the chairman. And so, Mr. Lannon, if you wouldn't mind approaching the podium and just letting us know the thoughts of the committee, items you'd like us to maintain in the mission, anything that you feel would be important for us to know as we consider moving forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Board, and Town Manager. The Patriotic Observance Committee had a meeting last Thursday evening to discuss this. A few weeks ago, I spoke with the Town Manager regarding his concerns. Some of them were the committee appoints their own successors, the registration fee that you mentioned. We've never collected a registration fee, and the sergeant-at-arms duties. So the most sure that he stated he had other concerns also. At this meeting, we basically reviewed everything, what was going on with the Selectmen's meeting and the looking to revoke the current bylaws. So we voted to eliminate that registration fee section for the sergeant-at-arms. Also, with the duties of the sergeant-at-arms were changed also for making it a public meeting for a public entity to reflect with the current state law and whatnot. And that has always been open meetings, and the meetings have been posted, and everyone's been welcome to come to the meetings and whatnot. So while there are some archaic things within the bylaws I've accepted previously, they haven't been enforced at all. There was discussion concerning, I think the overall concern of the committee is, the committee runs fine now. They're concerned about adding another layer of bureaucracy into it. They wanted to still appoint their successors or whatnot, have it how it is going now. Though you have concerns about that, but the committee has been running for years, forming its mission. Everything's been working out fine. So we're concerned about changing things, you know, drastically. As I said, we changed those largest items, and we're looking at a subcommittee. We'll work with you to change other items if you wish, you know, and discuss those. But the biggest concern with the committee is we're doing a mission and it's coming out well, so why are we gonna add to it more bureaucracy and whatnot? I think we'd like to keep the group as it is. Probably keep the veteran service officer a member of the group. We're looking at 9 members. Right now, we have 11 members and possibly 12. If we have someone come to a meeting and they want to be involved, if all our members are involved as previous group said that some of the members that were appointed by the board weren't involved. Everyone on the Patriotic Observance Committee meeting is involved. They come to meetings. We had a member come for a few meetings because their son was in the military, so they wanted to get more involved. So they helped out the landscaping and photography for the committee. So we don't have a set number of people. We have as many people who want to be involved. We vote them. If they come to a few meetings, they're engaged, then they become involved and we vote them in as a member.
So, I think, can I make a comment?
Yeah.
I think one of the things that the intent is not to add more bureaucracy, but to remove bureaucracy, to remove the bylaws and run as we do other committees in town where, you know, we don't really have any kind of set bylaws in this form. You know, really, like if you think of the, what is it, the Festival Committee, I don't believe they run under a set of bylaws. It's really, I think, to try to remove the bureaucracy, and you know, I again would question the, you know, why there's the, you know, you name your own successor. I mean, I don't think that we wouldn't accept suggestions for successors, but I mean, I don't understand that process. You know, you name your own successor, but I think the intent is to remove the bureaucracy and not add another layer of it. You know, maybe
Well,
I feel.
Our intent is to keep doing the mission that we're doing, supporting the veterans if any special projects come up, and running the parades, and having us in charge of running the parades, how it's been and how the committee was originally formed and that mission.
I wouldn't suggest changing that at all. I think you guys do a fantastic job. You know,
Right.
we always have
I
to.
think we're the envy, actually, of the Merrimack Valley, in fact, because I don't know that other communities have anything close to it. And I think that even in our discussion last week, we talked about the idea of having formal members, but then an unlimited number of associate members, so that way, you know, they could continue as a group to broaden what they tackle. Beyond the bylaws, are there, I mean, it's, again, like many committees in town, we haven't had the Patriotic Observance Committee before us, and I know that you were thrown several curveballs just in my short tenure, where you've had a Memorial Day, Veterans Day, and then I think a second Memorial Day rained out, and still managed to execute a really great event. Are there things that we could do to further support those efforts? I mean, it's almost goofy to say because I think, again, it's the envy of the Merrimack Valley, but.
No, just let us operate. I mean, Ted Tripp, the Pride Chairman, and Ed Mitchell, they hammered everything out over the years, so everything was pretty much, when I took over, everything, you know, we pretty much know what to do and who to call and schedule with the schools in case there's a rain out, and have everything, the auditorium on hold due to inclement weather and whatnot, so we've pretty much have this down pat now.
I think from what happened at the meeting, there was a lot of discussion that it was sort of a citizens group, which is so often how our committees get started. Like you have, you know, the library, and then you have the festival committee, and we have the recycling committee, so it's sort of a citizens committee. But the one thing that's a little bit unique about this committee, it's because it is, in many, many cases, but not all, it's veterans supporting veterans, and there's protocol to these events. Things need to be handled a certain way, just by nature of the military. So it's a little bit different. So I think some of the concern was that it's got to keep a big portion of that military component and military involvement of the veterans, those who are, you know, serving, whether it be in the reserves or whatever. Some of it is family members of the military. And then there's just regular volunteers who are just very patriotic and pro-military in nature. So what I think some of the committee felt is it's sort of a citizens group to doing something nice, and with it they are assisting the VSO. So I think they're a little concerned that the focus needs to be that, and even the membership should really be people sort of in the know of the military protocol. Because I'll tell you, just from years ago when we were, you know, I bought the banners for, you know, welcome, you know, thank you veterans. And believe me, I was put right in my place because that banner wasn't in the right spot, and I was like, okay. We wanted it in front of the procession of colors, and it's like, no, that comes first, the banner must go behind. So we thought we were just welcoming everybody. So there are things about it that's a little bit unique, that you really do need people who understand, again, the military protocol. And that seemed to be a big focus of the discussion. So
I think that, first of all, the way the articles are written, actually, a citizen of North Andover can't just be on this committee. You have to be a former employed or retired town employee or veteran.
Well, then I'm
or
in
school
trouble.
administrator, or town selectman, or their designee. I mean, so it's written such that there's an unlimited number of members that fall within those categories I just said. And then those members vote on the 8 officers, if I understand this correctly, chairman, secretary, sergeant at arms, et cetera. But when I look at the list of members, it looks like the officers are really the members. So actuality doesn't follow what this document says right now, because the members are the officers.
The officers are part of membership. Those are offices that are filled from the membership.
And the
So there's
member.
There's 8 offices out of.
But are you
depends on how many
following this?
have.
Like, are there citizen members, or are they all?
Yeah, there's anyone, like I said, anyone who comes to the meeting, who shows interest and does work.
I mean, I guess my feeling about this document is it sounds like you're not really following a lot of what's in this document anyway.
No,
you're
you're
not
right.
collecting fees.
No.
You're not having a sergeant of arms
Our main concern
not let
is.
people be in the meeting because they haven't paid fees.
Yeah.
You're not
And that was,
having
that was totally,
limiting
that was,
membership to only veterans. You're letting citizens. So
but that was agreed to at that meeting. People went, yeah, we don't need all of, we don't, it was, and I'll let the chairman speak to it, but most of the people were like, no, we shouldn't be doing this. This is, and I believe, and the prior chairman could speak to where they came up with those regulations, but I think it came out of the VFW or the American Legion or something like that. But I don't think there was any disagreement from the committee on that.
And regarding the point of you need, people with military knowledge or whatever, I think we do that on lots of committees. We say, like, having just been a part of the sub-appointment committee, I've been looking at every committee and looking at different committees have different requirements. So the Historical Preservation Committee, for example, we want to have an architect and we want to have a realtor or whatever. So we kind of say, for this committee, we need to have, of the 9 people, 7 should somehow have these different various skill sets. We need a realtor, we need a historical preservation knowledgeable person, whatever. So I think we should do that for this committee. I mean, I feel like this doesn't seem to work for what the committee is doing, because it sounds like you're not doing a lot of this. So what you need is a mission statement that explains what you are actually doing, which is great and should
Well,
continue.
we have that mission statement.
So,
That's-
yeah, I agree. That mission statement's good, that's there.
We're fine with the basic mission statement that we already have. I don't know if you have concerns with that itself, but.
Yeah, no, I don't.
But
That
we're
mission
basically
statement's
in
good.
control of what we do now, and that's how we want to remain. You guys always have the authority to decommission us if you're not happy with the results of the committee.
Let me just comment on that, Mr. Chair. So I don't think that there's any intention to decommission anything. I think the question I have is, if these bylaws are not in place, what happens to your committee? You say you want to just continue as you're doing, and we absolutely want that. There's no way that we don't want that. But what happens if these articles and these bylaws aren't in place? What's the ramifications of that? I guess my question is.
Chaos.
Having known Lieutenant Lanner for a long time, I know I understand
We
his
move on,
sense
and
of humor.
if we have none, then we vote on new ones. We'll use Robert's Rules of Orders that come up with, every other committee sets up their own committee, who's chairman, vice chairman, if they have a secretary or whatnot. So we'll do the same thing and come up with a new set if we have to.
Great, so let's get rid of the bureaucracy and let's move forward. And I think at the end of the day, as Selectman Keen said, we've seen this with the folks as we've been going through the committees. We looked at the folks that support the senior center, and we had 2 folks who show up who actually work with the elderly or work with the nursing. And I absolutely am a believer in this town of 30,000 people. You will get more than enough volunteers and more than enough expertise, and it's our responsibility as a selectman to make sure that there are good appointments on each one of these subcommittees. And part of the reason why Selectman Keene and I are reaching out to the chairs, that we want to make sure we're in tune with your message, with your mission, and you certainly have my commitment, and we will make sure that your mission is supported in every way possible going forward. So let's get this bureaucracy off there and get focused on what we need to do, which is to help you broaden the inclusion on this and really set the opportunity for more folks to participate regularly in the future.
So would you be opposed to, okay, the part that everyone seems to agree, that just, of course we should let Mr. Tripp talk, but that didn't seem to work and is not being followed, and there's an agreement on the mission statement, that perhaps that there could be a meeting with the appointment subcommittee to go over the other things that would make the committee succeed, or have them make a proposal and submit it to you. It is a little bit different than other committees just because of, I think, the military component and the military protocol that's involved. And believe it or not, there's a lot of hard work that goes into these events behind the scenes.
And I'm sort of talking around the edges to the idea that Board of Selectmen has an appointing authority, and they can't, I'm not sure how the Board of Selectmen, this was one of the points I raised in the memo that you've received and you received as well, Mr. Lennon, and I've communicated this to Ted Tripp in the past. One, I do have an objection with the VSO being a member of the committee. His job description is very clear. He stands to work with the committee, but being a member of the committee would be uncommon for almost everything else we do. So the Festival Committee isn't a good example because they run almost independently, which this group could largely do.
Exactly.
Other committees, typically the employee is there working in parallel, not a fixed member of the committee. And two, we just don't have another example where the Board of Selectmen has ceded its authority of appointment to a body who then reappoints themselves. I think the committee's great. I stand by my memo. It's clear that I support the committee and the work they do. I think everybody is saying the same thing, but we seem to be tinkering around the edges to a core fundamental, which is the committee believes that it can appoint its own replacements better than the Board of Selectmen can, and I think that just gets into a little bit of a funny spot. The Festival Committee does not reappoint its own members. You do. The council, whatever the committee is, the Board of Selectmen does that. That's one of the fundamental roles of a Board of Selectmen. And so I think the committee does great work. There's no reason to believe that without the bylaws that they wouldn't do the same work the next day, as Mr. Lannon said, follow Robert's Rules of Orders. But I think the core piece to it all is the idea that the board cedes the authority of reappointment to the members, means only the members determine what the committee looks like now and in perpetuity.
I think that your point really has hit home, especially I think with the preponderance of this board, Mr. Manager. I do want to give a courtesy to the former chairman because he was so instrumental in setting this board up. And so unless there are any more questions for Mr. Lannon, I know that Selectman Smedili had some questions earlier for Mr. Tripp.
I did see him standing and didn't want to step on what might be his message, which I have no idea what it is.
Ted Tripp, 262 Boston Street. Up until a little over a year ago, I was a member of the committee for 8 years and chairman for 4 years. And to give a little bit of perspective might be helpful here. I knew Ed Mitchell even before I was a member of the committee, and I talked to him about various things. And when he first started working here and he became involved in the Memorial Day and Veterans Day parade and ceremony, he realized it was a lot of work. And he knew it was taking a lot of time away from the work he should have been doing with veterans. So shortly thereafter, that's when he started the Patriotic Observance and Marching Committee, which we now just call the Patriotic Observance Committee. And then in some period after that, he came up with the Constitution and bylaws of the committee that we're talking about now. And I remember talking to him about this, and the idea, I think, behind it was to get some community involvement. So we kind of put a little splash into it, and we have the Sergeant of Arms and and some other things in here. And, you know, we all went through it and said, there's a lot of stuff in here that doesn't make any sense. You know, like charging fees and just a lot of inconsistencies in putting it together. And Ed says, yeah, I know. And I think we were both surprised it was actually approved by the Board of Selectmen at some time in the past. I don't know if they actually ever read it or not, but it didn't make a lot of sense. And we talked about it. We said, yeah, sometime we ought to redo this and resubmit it. We never did. But in the 8 years and 4 years I was chairman, we operated just using the parts of this that really kind of made any sense. And that was the election of officers, which we did every 2 years, and basically operating meetings using basically Robert's rules of order. I thought we did a pretty good job in putting programs together. When I started, Ed was chair. He stepped down. Actually, I don't know if he stepped down, but he made me chairman 4 years later. So he could step aside and spend more time working on veterans issues. And as I took over more of the duties of putting together the programs and the parade and so forth, he spent more times on veterans. And I really think the whole idea he had behind this committee was to make it totally independent of the Veterans Office. So the VSO would then just become an advisor to the committee. The committee itself would run the parade, the ceremony, and if there was anything else that had to do along these lines, like I think it was a year and a half ago, we added the 994th name to the World War II monument. That was a committee project, for example. And the veterans housing that we did a couple of years ago, that was a committee project. These are the kinds of things that we got involved in that if it was just handled by the VSO, it would have taken too much time away from the VSO handling everyday veterans issues. So I really think that it should remain a totally independent committee. It should not become an adjunct of the Veterans Office. I know there's been a suggestion here that the mission be modified that says in cooperation with and in support of the town's Veteran Service Officer. I don't think that's particularly appropriate. I think it should just stay independent, and I think it should relate somewhere in here that the VSO should be the assistant to the committee. I know the town manager doesn't want to have him as an employee, a member of the committee, but we certainly want to have him there at the meetings and assist. His recommendations, his input, I think is vital. So that would be one recommendation, is to keep the committee independent. The other thing is, on the bylaws itself.
I don't want to interrupt, but you're saying completely independent, but then that the employee serves the committee? I just want to make sure. You're saying you want
advisory capacity.
You want
The VSO should at least be at the committee meetings in an advisory capacity, if he's not a member of the committee. I mean, in the past, he's always been a member of the committee. But if it's not good.
But that was a committee created, that's why we're here to talk about it.
Okay.
Because a document was created that we're now hearing the Board of Selectmen approved and may not have read. So that's part of the reason we're here. We want to make sure that the committee and its activities, which are noble and important, stay intact, but we fix the governance piece, which is a problem, quite frankly. That's what we're trying to do, so we can move it forward.
I agree. So
And I don't think there's any question about the independence, and it's continuing to function as the board does today. It's just, and you're even saying, Mr. Tripp, that you don't
If you
follow
want to repeal
laws.
these, it's fine with me, okay? Dan is chair now, so, but I would have no problem with repealing these, and I think they could be reconstructed as maybe an operating document within the committee, if they so choose. Now, the second item I want to address is the appointment. Oh, by the way, I always was under the impression when I was chair that the committee itself always reported to the Board of Selectmen. So if the Board of Selectmen wanted to change something on the committee, it was their purview to do so. You know, to change the makeup of the committee, to do away with the bylaws, to change the bylaws or whatever. So that was always that was always my impression. Now, when it comes to appointing members, I think if the Board of Selectmen wants to do this, you need some kind of a structure. For example, even though it doesn't say so in the bylaws, we always considered the commander of the VFW and the commander of the American Legion a member of the committee. Now, the problem you might run into is they change every year, so you can't appoint them to a 2-year term. The other thing that may or may not be relevant is sometimes they don't live in North Andover, so they're not North Andover residents. VFW commander can be from Haverhill, wherever, but we always thought they were integral parts of the committee. We also always had a chaplain, which was a local minister from North Andover. Reverend Richard Knight from the Trinitarian Church was always our chaplain when I was on the committee, and that always came in, or it came in handy a number of times when we had situations where prayer was called for with family members or whatever. And I don't know how you would leave it up to the board to nominate or choose or select a chaplain. You know, would you want to say it would be on the recommendation of the chairman of the committee? I think it should be somebody the committee is comfortable with. I don't know how you would do that. So it's something you have to think about. The third item, when it comes under selecting somebody to be on the board, is the student liaison, which is actually mentioned in the bylaws. And we have tried in the past to get a junior. We like this connection with the high school, so we have a student involved. And if you've been to the ceremony, you know we usually have the student read a passage or a poem during the ceremony at the on Memorial Day or Veterans Day. We try to get a junior, so there's a 2-year sort of stretch that they serve on the committee, but sometimes we can only get a senior, so they only serve 1 year. So you're going to have a different person on the second year, so you can't appoint the same student for 2 years. I know Ed tried pretty much unsuccessfully to have the high school come up with the name of the student, the principal of the high school, to suggest or recommend a student to be on the committee. That didn't work out very well. So when we finally got a good student that wanted to be on the committee, was contributing and so forth, we usually had that student liaison recommend the next student liaison to be on the committee. And that actually worked out pretty well. We had a couple of students. We had one that went to the Naval Academy. I think we had another one that went to West Point. So we had some very engaged, very smart North Andover High School students. So I'm not sure how you would work that into appointments by the Board of Selectmen.
I think we can work with the committee,
Subcommittee
can work with the committee to come up with the guidelines.
This becomes difficult in how you put it together. I'm not against you doing this, but some of these might be easier to do within the committee itself. So again, I know at the end of Dan Landon's talk, you were thinking of maybe the subcommittee getting together with Dan and maybe other members of the Patriotic Observance Committee and thinking of how you can do this. But that's something that has to be hammered out on how you put together appointments that make some sense. So that's basically what I have to say.
Well, thank you for closely following this.
Okay, any questions? Okay, thank you.
Sir, I will entertain you as well, if you wouldn't mind coming up to the board and stating your name.
The present one. First of all, I don't know how you can evaluate a person for a veterans enthusiastic group. We don't need dignitaries. The people that walk in may be a Gold Star mother, maybe a mother of a new veteran, could be anyone, but they're driven with a cause. And those causes are what drives this committee. We're involved with events, monuments, families, Veterans Affairs, images, and education. And a lot of what we deal with is not the town. We're talking about beautifying the Minuteman up at the administrative building across from Kittredge School. Topsfield did it with Essex Aggie. We're in the process of trying to get them to do things. It seems we're not dependent on the town, even though we want to coordinate with the town. But in other words, you may think a person, you know, got these ribbons and got this and should be wonderful for veterans. The worst people in the world are veterans. They won't take care of themselves and use their own benefits. And this is why we have Jerry Maguire, who's such an advocate person and is doing a great job. But the trouble is, by the time people wake up to the fact that they can get hearing aids, they can't hear anyway.
So specifically about this committee, did you have any input that you wanted to provide direction on, or?
It's the best way to have people is trial by fire. They come in with a cause because they've never heard of the committee before. They've talked to somebody at church, and they have a cause, or a Gold Star mother or something. Do you want us to say, well, you've got to go get qualified by the selectmen to become a member?
It is the same with every board, though.
I'm not going to tell them that.
And you may not have to be the one that tells them that.
This is it. We don't want it. The energy, it's very strange. The energy for veterans phases in and phases out based on politics, events, and so forth. But the people that are there, which are, many of them are civilians, and in the interaction between civilian and military is what it's all about. Making the presentations palatable to the people and enjoyable to the people.
And we're not suggesting to change any of that. I think, you know, when you talk about these the Gold Stars mothers and the others that come in with a cause, do they get appointed to the committee and then do they leave after a certain time? Or how do they interact with the committee when you say like the Gold Star mothers that come in? Do they become part of the committee for a period of time and then they leave?
In some cases, they usually have a cause. There's many, many causes going on all the time. All the time. The Veterans Administration is totally in upheaval, as you well know. There's programs for this, programs for that. And, you know, being aware of these things is extremely important. And everybody comes in with a new idea.
You know, I understand. Well, I'm just, the question I'm asking is, so when they come in, like a Gold Star mother or someone like that, do they become part of the committee, or are they volunteers to the committee and assist on certain projects or certain, you know, to work through their cause? Both, okay.
Both, depending on what they're coming from. Maybe they're coming to check us out.
So we're not suggesting change. I mean, if there's an opening on the committee, then someone can still come in and try to fill that slot, or if there's volunteer positions.
But it's not a single cause.
I'm not saying
maybe
that.
A family
I'm not arguing that point, Mr. Thompson. I'm just saying, I don't think we're trying to change the way members come onto the committee. It's just we're trying to make it consistent with other boards and other committees, that's all. You know, we're not trying to change anything. And if you have volunteers that are not part of the committee but come in to help, you know, with Veterans Day or something like that, we don't want to change that either. We want those.
Well, I guess my point being, you don't have to be military to be an advocate for veterans. Some of the best advocates are
A
civilians.
lot of
Okay.
advocates up here.
Okay.
And, yeah.
So how are you going to evaluate? They may give you, they may have a list of qualifications. They get there, they say, oh, I'm a committee, and they do nothing.
And that's something we'll pay attention to. But Mr. Thompson, thank you for speaking and reminding us, though, just how sensitive the experiences, the people who apply for this committee, the experiences they may have faced. So thank you. Thank you for expressing your thoughts. So.
Can I just make one point to address some of the things that were raised here? I think that I want to make a distinction between the chairman and the roles. So if the committee chooses to have a chairman, which I think it should, obviously all the committees have chairman, the people that are on the committee vote each year on the chairman, just like we voted on the new chairman for our board. So that part isn't going away of the members of the committee will still vote on the roles in the committee. We're simply saying that the Board of Selectmen should be consistent with all, it should be consistent with all other committees, that the Board of Selectmen meet with candidates and fill recommendations for who serves on the committee. And that can be 9 people plus any number of associate members. If you want to have every veteran who wants to be involved as an associate member because you feel that's the right thing to do, then you can say that, right? I mean, we can work on how many associate members you have or whatever with the current executive board of this committee, right? They would be the immediate members. If we repeal this, it would be, the current members would be the executive board as defined on this document.
So what you are saying is kind of getting back to what I said, that the committee would put forth their ideas and then work with the board and as to how it would be set up, maybe similar to
Operating principles, if you will. If they say we would like to have
like
X, Y, and Z characteristics or traits, we want to have one, well, you currently already have a chaplain and all that, but for going forward, we would want to have these roles or these skills or whatever, then that would be documented, yes, as part of an operating principle for the committee.
So is this something that you can repeal the things that I think everyone is in agreement to, and then at a future date come back with whatever changes, if necessary? Maybe it'll be all set and we won't have to change too much, but it just seems as there's a lot of agreement more than disagreement, is what I'm hearing.
And I would actually say that's that committee's prerogative once we establish it. If they want to establish those roles, it's no different than a lot of our committees that we already
That's
appoint
true.
creating
Right.
subcommittees. And that would eliminate the concern, which is legitimate. They don't want added bureaucracy. They
Right.
don't need to come to us
Yeah, they
once
don't
we
need to
have
come to us,
a
exactly.
mission statement. They can go and continue to create, these added responsibilities, somebody who wants to help the committee, because again, they're not a land use board. They're not a board that's.
Exactly. It's a citizen-type board, similar
exactly.
to the festival committee, similar to the recycling committee.
And the festival committee has tons of people that help them out as volunteers in different ways that aren't actually formal members. And, I mean, it seems to work really, I think, again, we
It
all agree
does,
that's a
but-
good committee.
But it is a great
for the work
committee.
they
But the
produce.
festival committee, too, they have a lot of people that sign up, and then they find out, gee, I got to work on the holidays when I want to go away, or whatever. So that has a lot of turnover. And it can also be somewhat the case with the Veterans Committee. These events are usually held on a holiday.
Absolutely. And I think that will be on our subcommittee to make sure when they vet appointees. Actually, we heard it this evening from the chairman of the Youth and Rec Council that Kevin Driscoll was consulted before. Later this evening, we're voting on somebody to be appointed, and I think that's something we're striving to get in the habit of as a board collectively, engaging the chairman, engaging the executive boards of these committees so that we know what's going on. I mean, I don't think we should count this actually as the time that the Patriotic Observance Committee comes to us. I think we want them to come back and we want to find out more in detail of what are ways that we can continue to help them. I actually think this is going to be cutting a lot of red tape, and again, it leaves it back up to them how they want to structure their meetings, but streamlining it as far as how they interact with the board, potentially.
I think
once the motion's
of
made.
all the committees and boards, and I think, Dickie, because you and I, we've been doing this the longest, we get so many compliments on our Patriotic Observance events. People go away they go to those events and go away feeling better than when they arrived. You go away with a feeling of honor and tribute and gratefulness to those who have served and pride in our country. And we hear it all the time. And the committee just seems to do better and better. And that's not unlike the festival committee, other these sort of citizen-driven committees. We hear good things about all of our boards and committees, and sometimes we hear other things too, but we do get a lot of compliments on the Patriotic Observance Committee and the Festival Committee and the hard workers of the recycling. We just do. And so I guess I'm trying to figure out a way we could just sort of wrap this up, that everyone seems to be in agreement, everybody, in repealing sort of those archaic rules and regs that were never followed anyways.
The natural way would be the motion.
So do I hear a motion?
I will move to repeal the bylaws, Constitution and bylaws of the North Andover Patriotic Observance Committee, and replace, and establish, do I have to establish the committee? Reestablish it? It's not established by this. It's already established. This is just repealing this.
Repealing those and then...
Repealing this and replacing it with a mission statement to work in cooperation and support with the town's Veteran Services Officer to promote responsible citizenship and patriotic values throughout the community by effectively planning and coordinating appropriate parades and ceremonies during patriotic holidays and special events. Committee members, or by doing so, committee members strive to educate and promote the public awareness of the service and sacrifice of our nation's active duty military veterans and their families. That being the current purpose and mission statement stated in the bylaws that I just read. So
Selectman Keen, motion to repeal the bylaws and replace with a general mission statement as previously read. Do I hear a second?
Second?
Can I amend that to, I don't know if it's proper that I amend that, to include, working with the present committee to further establish, I don't know what to say, I guess other membership or discussions or so forth and so on.
Membership guidelines, maybe?
Maybe, so that,
So
or
we-
have them put a proposal together and work with you and have a dialogue going back and forth. The good thing is...
So wait, so are you making an...
An amendment, I guess, but I'm not sure that I
Can I just make a suggestion to
want to do
that?
that.
Because the next item on the agenda is to appoint, in essence, the current leadership so we can keep moving forward, right?
Right.
It would seem like that suggestion to appoint, I'm
You
summarizing.
want me to put it then?
Yeah, I think then, because
have
then,
one of my fellow
so that
board
clears what
members
you're
do it?
doing now, and then under the position that you're going to reappoint the existing leadership folks till the balance of the year,
Existing
and then add, if you want to amend that, then amending that so it would include some follow-up conversation with that group about establishing whatever you want to.
I thank you, I accept that. The only thing, I'm going to be honest, I'm a little bit uncomfortable about making a motion because I happen to serve on both committees. I serve on the Board of Selectmen and I'm on the Patriotic Observance Committee. So I guess I would ask that one of my fellow board members might reflect that in a motion as the town manager laid out.
as an amendment?
yeah.
Thank you.
So no motion made, we have instead...
Well, I guess
Or-
motion, I will kind of take back my friendly suggestion, not friendly amendment, but I will withdraw that and leave it to the board to kind of run with what I was hoping they would do.
So a motion made by Selectman Keen, seconded by Selectman Nobley, and I think the suggestions would expect, nothing less from the appointment subcommittee to seek and solicit the input of the existing committee. So any further discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
I will abstain.
So motion carries 4 in the affirmative, none opposed, and Selectman Smedili, may the record show, abstaining.
And please state the reason, because I'm not an abstainer.
I-
Difference between abstain and recuse.
If you want to use that word, that's just fine.
Abstain, right, abstain.
Yeah, use that word.
Anyways, so with that being said, so that motion carries, we'll move on. Good luck with the appointment
Well, now
subcommittee.
we need to move, we need to make a motion to appoint the members.
Okay. I thought that was.
So I'll move
second.
to appoint all existing members of the Patriotic Observance Committee. Are all the current members just the executive officers? Can I confirm
No,
that?
that we have a list that we got from
We have a list.
Chairman Lynn, and that there was 12, I believe, if that's correct. That includes the VSO, the Veteran Service Officer, which I would exclude. So I would say the current members, which would be a total of 11 from the list I received from Mr. Lannon. And then the board, in conjunction with the committee, can decide between now and the expiration of date what the group
Yeah.
looks like, but that will allow the
Right.
existing people to continue.
Yep. So I'll move to appoint all existing members of the Patriotic
Yep, and
Observance
leave it there.
Committee, reappoint them through June 30th, 2018, with a condition that the sub-appointment committee will work with the Patriotic Observance Committee chairman to define membership guidelines going forward.
So Selectman Keen made a motion,
Second.
seconded by Selectman Nobley. Any further discussion?
Looking forward to doing this.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
And I will abstain. I don't think recuse is the right word.
So let the record show 4 in the affirmative, 0 opposed, and Selectman Smedili abstaining. Okay, so that is for the Patriotic Observance Committee. We have now the Community Preservation Committee. We have 2 names, or rather 2 seats that we are filling, and I'll let the appointment subcommittee speak to that. Excuse me.
Well, it's been really a night of appointments to subcommittees, and one of the wonderful things that I think keeps coming through is the quality of folks and the commitment and the drive of folks to really help our town. And with that, against Regina, Selectman Keen and myself, really had a wonderful opportunity here for the Community Preservation Committee to appoint 2 folks who, through our discussions and knowledge of these folks, 2 folks that I think really will bring a lot of expertise, drive, and perspective to helping us set the future with this committee. And so I would move for the first appointment, that the Board of Selectmen appoint William Callahan to the Community Preservation Committee for a term ending June 30th, 2020.
Motion made by Selectman Nobley. Do I hear a second?
I'll second
Second.
Seconded by Selectman Valencourt. I'd like the record to show, so for folks at home, they may be scratching their heads. Mr. Callahan's name is a familiar one. He chairs our Finance Committee. Per our town charter, we do not allow the Finance Committee to, and I will let, you actually have it written in front of you, Selectman Smedili, about the actual section, but per the charter, we do not allow Finance Committee members to serve concurrently.
Yeah, according to our charter, and having served on the Finance Committee, I did know that, and I actually did try to call you, but you had already left for the day when I picked this up. So according to Chapter 9, 1-4, no member of the Finance Committee shall hold any other elected or appointed town office. So
So, Mr.
I'm certainly not necessarily opposed to the candidate. I just,
So yes, the appointing authority is the town moderator, but I do want to make sure that the record does show that Mr. Callahan, recognizing this, did submit a letter to the board, or to the chair, saying that should he be appointed to the CPC, he will resign from the Finance Committee. And Mr. Moderator, I know that this has been bittersweet for you, right?
Mark DeSalvo, 179 Coventry Lane. Damn you. Thank you for stealing my most senior member and an extraordinary chair and member who has contributed a great deal. Bill and I discussed this from the beginning. He has been nothing less than completely honorable and transparent relative to this circumstance. Recognized from the beginning that it would be his obligation, should he be appointed, to resign. He knew that it was my condition as well that he would resign, and we would enforce that. And if he chose not to resign, then he would be de-appointed if I have that authority. And well, thankfully, we don't have to determine whether I have that judicial authority. But notwithstanding that, it's important to stay on the record that Bill has been extraordinarily honorable has recognized that responsibility, has hewed to the town charter, will continue hewing to the town charter. And unfortunately, I can tell you he'll do an outstanding job as a member of your new committee. Thank you for making my life a little bit more difficult.
Well, thank you, Mr. DeSalvo. And so a motion has, I believe we have the motion still on the table, correct?
Motion and second already.
And so any further discussion about Mr. Callahan's appointment?
Other than, and you, when I brought this to your attention, other than it would be effective upon his official resignation, just to be not in conflict with the charter. So that would be the only thing that I would,
So make it contingent upon
Yeah.
resignation.
that would be.
Is that a
I will
friendly
submit
amendment?
I will submit that friendly amendment,
So-
not ask you to do it for me.
Selectman Smedili has submitted a friendly amendment to the motion, asking that the appointment of Mr. Callahan be contingent upon his resignation from the Finance Committee. Do I hear a second?
Second?
Seconded by Selectman Nobley. All in favor of the amendment?
Yes.
Or any discussion on the amendment? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none. The amendment passes. Now we'll vote on the full motion, which is to appoint Mr. Callahan through June 2018. Is that correct?
2020.
2020. Contingent upon his resignation from the Finance Committee. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none. Motion passes. Sorry, Mr. DeSalvo. You trained them well.
Yeah.
All right.
I should note one other thing, that Lori Burzloff has agreed to take on the role of board secretary there. So that will, I think, help the CPC in really accomplishing their mission and helping with the transparency and the scope of their mission. So wonderful to have Ms. Burzloff's expertise aboard with that committee, too.
So on the agenda, we had planned to recommend appointing Lori to the second opening on the committee, but as she's withdrawn her name, given the fact that she's going to be working in a staff capacity on the committee, we would like to recommend the appointment of Donovan O'Connell to the second position on the CPC committee. Donovan has been a resident of North Andover for some time and has spent his career in government relations and worked for the governor of Rhode Island as director of legislative affairs, and was involved in the purchase of over 10,000 acres of open space, worked in passing historic preservation legislation, and other very relevant experience that we think will be very beneficial to the committee. So we're pleased to recommend him for nomination to the committee as well.
Absolutely.
Another fine resident of Green Street.
Is that for the same term?
Yes, sorry, with the term ending June 30th, 2020.
So, a recommendation, do we have a formal motion?
Oh,
Your
sorry, I
formal
was
motion?
moving to
Moving.
recommend to appoint Donovan O'Connell to the CPC with a term expiring June 30th, 2020.
Motion made by Selectman Keen. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
That's second, Selectman Smedili. Any further discussion on Donovan? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations, Donovan. So, and then third item on the agenda this evening, back to Youth and Recreation Council, we have Jonathan Hertig. So we have somebody from the Appointment Subcommittee interested in speaking to this?
Yes, we had a very nice discussion with Jonathan Hertig and think he will be a great addition to the Youth and Recreation Council. He's working in the federal law enforcement space, and he's spent a majority of a large chunk of his career working with adolescents in several social services agencies. He's worked with the DEA around education and awareness of with at-risk youth around the drug crisis. And we think that's a very great skill to bring to the Youth and Rec group, as clearly they're advising youth, and it would be great to have someone with the skill set on that committee. So we would move to recommend the appointment of Jonathan Hertig to the Youth and Recreation Services Council for a term ending June 30th, 2020.
Motion made by Selectman Keen. Do I hear a second?
Seconded?
Seconded by Selectman Nobley. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Congratulations. So,
Looking forward to having you, Jonathan.
Mr. Valancourt, you've kind of taken that mantle. Do you want to? Do you want to give the screeching?
Oh, yeah, well, thank you to all our town volunteers. No, seriously, I was writing some notes here, but thank you. I mean, obviously, those volunteers really are the heart and soul of our town and keep things moving smoothly, and it's really one of the reasons why North Andover is such a great place to live, work, play, and go to school. So thank you to all our town volunteers. We really appreciate the efforts that you do and the time that you spend away from your families to give to the citizens and to the town, so thank you.
I love your phrase, the heart and soul, so maybe we can retire, the town will come to a screeching halt for a little bit, and you'll have your new phrase.
Yeah, we'll use that one, the heart and soul.
I'll Dick, it's heart and
I like
soul,
that one.
the heart and soul guy, not the screecher.
You know,
No.
the screech. But we did like it when Selectman Watson, yeah.
Great, so on to the next item on our agenda. We have item G, a right of first refusal for 0 Salem Street. And so,
Mr. Chairman,
here to
anytime
load.
that there is land in town which is protected by 268A, which is the ethics law, but 61A, which is traditionally open space, which gets reduced taxation for the benefit of preserving the open space. Anytime there's a land transfer or land protected by 61A, the board has the right of first refusal because that property owner has had a reduced property tax for the benefit of the community of making sure it stays preserved. In this particular case, we've been notified of a transaction at the address identified. Town council has reviewed the documentation, spoken to the parties. In this particular case, she and I are both recommending that we do not exercise the right of first refusal on that property. It's the expectation of the new owners to honor that same kind of preservation. And if for some reason after the transaction, 5, 10, 15 years in, they chose again to put the property on the market or sell it, we'd have another opportunity, the right of first refusal. So the continued passive use of that space, we believe there will actually be some a horse farm or some horses on the space. So open space, agriculture, recreation type use. We believe it's consistent with what the town has typically acted on, and no reason for the town to exercise the right of first refusal on this parcel.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I'll move that the Board of Selectmen decline the right of first refusal for the purchase of the property located at 0 Salem Street.
I'll second that.
Motion made by Selectman Valencourt, seconded by Selectman Spadili. Do I hear any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Vote to set the date for the 2018 annual town meeting. Oh, look
Yes,
at that.
it's coming
Feels
along,
like we just
isn't it?
finished the last one. But we're so excited for this spring, so
Joyce and others would tell you I didn't want to put this on the agenda. I just felt like it wasn't ready. But being in recovery from the last town meeting, it is important that the board set the date, which is a requirement under Chapter 59-6 of the town bylaws. So that date is set for May 15th, and we're recommending it be on May 15th, which is the common date, Tuesday, and around the middle of May.
Move that the Board of Selectmen set the date of the 2018 annual town meeting for Tuesday, May 15th, 2018 at 7 p.m.
motion made by Selectman Keen. Do I hear a second?
Seconded?
Seconded by Selectman Nobley. Any discussion? Anybody have any conflicts? Nope.
It's going to be here before we know it.
Well, that's good. That means we'll get through the winter. So, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Hearing none. Town meeting 2018 is scheduled for May 15th, so everyone at home, mark your calendars.
Stan already put it in his calendar.
Let the Tribune have a standing section in the
I
newspaper.
put it in mine today.
so.
I did too.
Maybe a little premature because we hadn't taken the vote yet, but I can always
7
change it.
p.m. was actually part of the motion, so you can't start any earlier, actually. So,
I can't
excellent.
even think about it right now. I gotta think
Final
about it.
item under communications and announcements, we have a vote, under consent items, we have a vote to designate new voting equipment as required by Chapter 54, Section 34. Mr. Ranger, do you have any backup information on this, any insight? or-
Certainly, the town clerk is here, and there's also a section of her
Joyce,
memo which
I
includes...
apologize, Madam Clerk, I
just
could
thought
not
she
see you
left.
behind the podium again.
Well, that's
So,
no problem. This is just a technical thing that the Board of Selectmen has to vote to discontinue the use of the AccuVote machines and to authorize the designation of ImageCast to be used as our official voting equipment. seeing that we no longer have AccuVote machines, but we have the new machines are procured and will be used for the first time unless something else comes up for the March election.
Exciting. Mr.
any-
Chair, I'll move that the Board of Selectmen does, do you have a question, or?
I just, anything
It's
dramatically
just a
different?
formality that you have to take the vote, and I send the vote to the Secretary of State's office so that this equipment can be used for election purposes.
But anything dramatically different with this new equipment? No?
No. Pretty
Look at
much
that.
the same, the new and improved.
Still have
And the
paper ballots?
AccuVote machines could not have been more flawlessly performing than they did on the presidential election. They did not miss a beat, and we've used them since 1995, and they were absolutely terrific for that. So but no, parts and services no longer available for it, so you can't use them on a continuing basis, and hopefully the new machines will perform for the next 20 years just as well as the old ones
And
did.
just so the board knows, the state only authorizes 2 machines, and we
Right.
went out for procurement, and several meetings ago, the board approved a contract in excess of 3 years for these machines and maintenance over a 7-year period.
Or Joyce, I'm sorry.
So, Mr. Chair, I was going to say, I'll move that the Board of Selectmen designate the ImageCast precinct vote tabulator as North Andover's voting equipment beginning with the annual town election scheduled for March 27th, 2018, and discontinue the use of the AccuVote voting machines. With our thanks to the AccuVote machines for their 22 years of dedicated service to the town of North Andover.
Yes, they have been formally taken to a happier place.
So Selectman Valencourt has made a motion that will include congratulations for those machines, apparently.
Second.
Seconded by Selectman Keen. Any further discussion? Thank you, Joyce. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Hearing none. Enjoy the machines. So with that, wraps up consent items. So do I hear a motion to move into licensing?
Motion to move into licensing?
Motion made by Selectman Spadili. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Seconded by Selectman Nobley. All in favor? Aye. We are into licensing.
All right, we're now in licensing. We have 2 items on the agenda tonight. One of them is 3 requests from Merrimack College for 1-day wine and malt license on August 31st from 3:30 to 7 at the Sackwich Campus Center. One-day wine and malt license for an orientation reception at the Sanctuary Cafe and Patio on Friday, September 1st. That's this week, 2017, 5:30 to 7:30. And a 1-day all-alcohol license for an evening of gratitude reception on Thursday, September 14th, 2017, from 5:30 to 10:30. Do I have a motion?
Oh, go ahead. I'll let you
Move
do
that
it.
the Board of Selectmen, acting as licensing commissioners, approve 3 one-day licenses from Merrimack College for events on August 31st, 2017, September 1st, 2017, and September 14th, 2017, as presented.
Second.
We have a motion, and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, opposed? None? Unanimous? Okay, next on licensing, we have a request for a change of the officers and directors of the 99 Restaurant. Looks like they're going through some changes. We received the paperwork. Is there anyone here to speak to that tonight? No? Okay, everything seems to be in order. There's no red flags from any of the various police, fire, et cetera. I think it's just really some housekeeping to maintain and update the board of directors for the 99 restaurant chain. It's actually quite a few towns and cities where they have establishments have to go through the same process. So, and the fee's been paid. So I'll hear a motion.
Move approval.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. I'll hear a motion to move out of licensing.
Motion to move out of licensing?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're now back to our regular.
So with that, we have old business, which we have none. We have public comment. I do see some members of the public in the audience. Any comments this evening? Nope.
Hey,
Stan?
hey.
We miss you, Stan, that's why. Well, seeing no public comment, we can move right into the town manager's report.
Certainly, Mr. Chairman, I'm open to answer any questions you may have about the specific reports. The reports have been amended based on conversations we've had with the board over the last several months. I see some changes to a number of the reports, including more specifically the overdose report. We continue to work with sort of a draft IT report, make some amendments to that to give you meaningful data, but we're getting some in-depth analytics about what's going on with our new website, which seems all to be positive at this particular point. I sent you an email earlier today giving you an update of various software implementations that have been ongoing, not too sexy, and that we don't talk about them a lot, but have been ongoing in some cases for more than 2 years, all really in intent to make sure that we, as we mature as an organization and people come and go, we have the kind of robust technology-based infrastructure to make sure new people can come in and know the product, it's familiar to the product, and we can be up and running. What's most important is we remain sustainable, and in order to do that, we need to make sure that our technology is moving forward and being progressive. We had an idea that came from an interesting source talking about the prospect of putting a live chat box on the front of our website. Chris is evaluating that. She's not currently at the meeting.
Well, Ray's so chatty, I would have guessed it was going to be
We're
him, but-
looking at ways that's possible. Nothing yet, but we're looking at various. We've got a suggestion today from Selectmen Nobley about another more interactive map that may help with some of our businesses, so we're looking at that. So any suggestions that the public or the board has that would allow us to continue to evolve from a technology perspective, an outward-facing perspective with our residents, we're willing to at least look at and engage and tell you if it works or it doesn't work. We'll let you know. So we're looking at a number of those different things to continue to evolve. I'll remind the board that our new trash hauler begins this Friday. So for those folks who have trash pickup on Friday, they will see 2 different color trucks. We have the north side carting trucks, typically white with red lettering, and we have the new JRM trucks, which are white. Both trucks are typically a little dirty, but white with green lettering, and they should not be surprised by the fact there are 2 different trucks. We'll make sure we place on the town's website and other places the contact numbers of both companies with the difference. Here's who you call if you have a trash concern. Here's who you call if you have a recycling concern. We continue to evaluate a change in the routes, and we'll be moving forward with one of those. We just want to make sure we give it the proper time to communicate with residents. That's not in play right now. Trash this week is as planned. It's just the truck will look a little different for those who have pickup on Friday. So we continue to evaluate ways to do that. The board is aware, and there was an article in one of the papers. There is a lawsuit which challenges CPC funding for religious organizations. It's an Acton case around, interestingly enough, renovations to an 1832 church. We've previously funded the improvements to an 1833 church with CPC funds back in 2005, and I think the position, town's position continues to be that there is a public interest in maintaining an historical asset, that we see it less as a religious asset and more as an historical asset in terms of its location to the center, the epicenter of the town's history, and the fact that it was around in 1833 when really a lot about the community was still being formulated. So we maintain that position. We'll pay attention to that particular lawsuit. Then if it, for some reason, is settled that towns can continue to fund, CPC can continue to fund those kind of projects, I'll let you know. If it goes the other way, it says we cannot, we certainly will advise the CPC of any restrictions or that they may have on future funding. Any questions from the board?
One thing I did note was I appreciated the update on the capital projects, the way we've got a lot of things kind of wrapping up and launching, and so there's a lot of moving parts.
Yes.
DPW is taking on a new look.
Yeah, if you have a chance to drive by the DPW facility, what you see in a very positive way, one of those really exciting projects, a salt shed project. There's nothing like an exciting brand new salt shed, but for those of us who worry about running out of salt in the middle of a snowy, icy storm, this particular investment's important. It is 4 or 5 times larger than the previous salt shed. We'll make sure that we can store more and make sure we don't have, I think once last year we got really close on running out, which is always a scary proposition, because if we're running out, other communities around us are running out, and it may take a couple days to do that. So there are other good things happening around that project, but for some of us, the new salt shed is an exciting addition.
And when will it be painted red?
Tack red.
Just checking. Make sure no change orders.
No change order.
So, Mr. Manager, I know it's tough because we are the first community to really implement it, but for textile recycling, we did see the dip.
Yep.
After two basically equal months, we saw a dip in July. Is that something that we could attribute to vacations, or just people got
I
the
think a
stuff
little
out of
bit
their
of both.
garage, or?
Yeah, I think people got the stuff out of the garage. I would expect that the number will settle in somewhere at that number, slightly north of that. You have the summer, so we see a lot of, we see tonnage on trash reduced during the summer. So I think you'll see a little bit of both. We have to continue to market the program to make sure it catches on. It is growing in not a number of other communities as well. So it has started to really take off as a statewide initiative. I think as it becomes more commonplace and people talk about it in the supermarket and here and in other places, you'll see a bump. But I would think that that's probably the right number. What we're seeing now is a more likely outcome of the numbers.
Yeah, what you could have seen is people just cleaning out their closets that first time. I mean, it's not like
Exactly.
you're generating this all the time. It's like, it could be a one-time event that you clean out the closet.
Yeah.
and you wrap up.
Is it just textiles? Fall clothes.
It's a little bit beyond textiles. We've been cautious not to advertise it too broadly because we don't want things in bags that probably shouldn't be there. There are some other things, and we will likely continue or likely start to communicate some of the additional items that can go in there that are not purely textile. For instance, shoes and sneakers are not traditional textiles as we know in terms of clothing. There are some small appliances which they will accept. I don't mean washing machines, I mean
Right.
small appliances.
That's what I thought I read on the flyer. That's what I
Yes,
wanted to make
so
sure.
we will likely start to communicate that information out and broaden the program a little bit. We were just cautious in-house of saying, here's the list.
Right.
And watching people trying to stuff things in some of those bags which just didn't actually fit.
So like old, so that's a little bit of a self-serving question, like old doorknobs, hinges, I mean, those aren't,
I asked because I put something that wasn't quite a textile in mine, and I was
but you
like,
said
Mine?
small
darn, I
appliances, so
thought
I
it
wasn't
wasn't
gonna.
just textiles, but.
We will communicate the clear list of those. The list that originally came out the circular when Bruce was here, and Ray and I sat down, was a longer list, and we sort of drew a line around some of those things which we're a little concerned, given some trash issues we're having as well. We just didn't want this growing third waste stream.
Right.
But we'll probably get, I'll discuss with Jim Stanford the possibility of expanding what appears in that flyer and communicating that more publicly to make sure that we start to get some additional tonnage here, but make sure that what we see in those bags remains appropriate.
But hardware's not on the list.
Do we continue to have funds though? I guess I didn't understand how, are we funding the community outreach, or is that part of the contract with?
No, that's all
with your-
part of them. Yep.
So other than the actual mailed out flyers, are they doing anything through social media or online advertising to direct?
We're all doing, well, social media is, I would argue, is free in large part. So we're using our own social media resources. We're communicating that back out. They are doing some of the same. So they're part of their advertisement is when you get a bag is to put something back on the person's, stoop. They now have magnets which identify the program which they can leave for residents. I know that Mr. Nobley talked about some recognition. We haven't yet got to that point of doing that. I think now that the program is maturing itself, meaning more months under our belt, we'll start looking at the prospect of having some bags available at Town Hall. I was concerned about doing that initially and having them just sort of grabbed, so we may make them available in one or more departments that have people, not leave them out on the counter, but if people have an interest, they can get them there rather than waiting for the return of the company, from the company of a replacement bag. So
You're talking about the senior center, for instance, as being a good place for those?
Yeah, again, I want to avoid the sort of laying them out and they end up in trash buckets or in people using them for things other than the recycling. That's my concern. But we need to do, now that we've gotten some months under our belt, we'll continue to try to expand the program because as it is, from a tonnage perspective, even though there was a drop in the third month, that's a significant amount of weight coming out of our, so forget that sort of nominal amount that we're receiving as a return. It costs us about, when we get the number wrong, approximately $75 a ton to dispose of solid waste. So every ton of this material that we're getting dollars for is coming out of waste stream that we're not paying $75 for. And I think all of that is good in the long term. Yep. And maybe in conjunction with a long-term program where we look at the town's trash bylaw. We have an unusual bylaw that allows 8 barrels, which I don't know anybody who really uses 8 barrels, except in cases where they're doing the kinds of cleanouts we have to be a little concerned about. But 8 barrels is a fair amount.
What about the schools? Is there any tie-in with this to the schools?
No, because this goes door to door. The schools do have receptacles for the textiles. They do. We are tied into the schools for the recycling and trash programs because part of the trash contract includes recycling bins and trash bins for the schools. And so the schools have, are part of the recycling initiative. But the school by school, they're involved in their own textile program, which is fine. It doesn't. I think it's just an option. Sometimes it's a convenience to pull by some of these boxes as they're dropping off their kids. So we didn't, as we started to talk about this program nearly a year ago, we didn't want to step on those initiatives and sort of say they don't require that they be exclusive, which is a positive thing. But we want to be cautious. So until the schools feel like the existing relationship they have isn't working, we'd want to leave those parallel for now.
Well, the point is too, it's just less tonnage.
Yep.
Which is all good, and it's recycling. It's all good, whether we get it or the schools get it or other.
Just making sure that we don't have, we clear the focus. So if they have if those boxes ever go away because it's not quite working out, and there's a dollar return on those, I'm sure we could engage the company to do the same thing.
Well, we kind of already drifted into item B, which is ask the manager. It seems like we've been peppering you
Item
with
B,
questions.
yes.
So I don't know if there are other additional questions for the town manager.
Move adjournment.
Only.
Sounded like Don Stewart.
Motion made. Do I hear a second? Although I guess actually.
I just want to make one comment on, I just want
Okay,
to
Joe.
say very quickly, on the library report, there's information about the summer program.
Yes.
And I just want to comment how very successful I thought that summer program was. I was very happy to see the integration of the library with the schools. As I think any area where we can integrate, what the town is doing with what the schools is doing is great. And my children were participants of it, and it was really great for them. And I saw tons of kids in there all the time, and I just want to say kudos to the library team for that great summer program.
And I'll pass that along.
I can vouch for that, not having children, your children's age.
You live near it, you saw it.
Because I see all the cars, and I always love it, because I know something great is going on at the library. And I knew it had to do with children, because they were all in tow.
And I think there was a comment just for the public, that it's just 3 times or 5 times the participation of last year, so really, really great job.
It really was overall, and I certainly will pass along those comments. It was a fantastic summer, the programs in both Youth and Rec and the library.
Yes.
We had one day out of a summer in terms of Stevie's Pond that we did not have, that was not open, which was a very warm day, but it was one day, and overall, it was a fantastic summer in terms of the residents' opportunity to participate in programs, and we certainly appreciate the staff, and I'll pass along the comments to the library.
I think what the town offers the children in North
That's
Andover is
great.
really, really great, really
Good stuff.
phenomenal. Happy to be a part of it, so.
So the next item was the meeting date, which is Monday,
Yes.
September 18th, which is not the scheduled meeting. So for anybody who sets their calendar to what we discussed in June. We had an informal conversation with the board. It turns out the next meeting date does conflict with 2 of the members' schedules. And so this date of Monday, September 18th was floated. Is everybody comfortable with that date? So that would be the next meeting date, Monday, September 18th. The week
So
after,
instead of the 11th, we're going,
in lieu of the 11th, yes.
It wasn't a good day, because we have our events.
It is true. It's an event where we do the observances, 9/11 ceremonies. I know, again, Selectmen Nobley and myself were unable to attend that evening as well. So we are suggesting that the date that it be moved to be Monday, September 18th. Actually, Selectman Nobley is unavailable all that week, so it wouldn't exactly be solving problems to move it to just the next day or 2 days later. However, the next week, so we hypothetically meeting Monday, September 18th. The next week we had a regularly scheduled meeting for the 25th, as well as our strategic planning meeting for the 26th.
Oh, that was finalized? I didn't realize it was finalized. The 26th is final?
Yes. So I think there were some options, which was to hold, are you looking for a vote on that? Or you didn't
Well,
want to
I
use the
guess I'm
options?
looking at, is there any feedback, any concerns? I mean, that's a meeting date. I mean, I don't know how, I think we all enjoy seeing each other, so we certainly make up for the summer meetings or lack of. at the end of September, but,
So we're saying the 18th, and what was the date?
so the next regularly scheduled one after that is the 25th, and then we are also meeting on the 26th.
So it is the
for-
25th and the 26th?
It would be, unless we decided, I mean, we could certainly decide right now, and that's kind of what I'm throwing out there. Do we want to consolidate the 25th and 26th, perhaps by having,
I think we should combine them, just
Yeah.
keep the agenda light on.
So one possibility would be to try to combine the 26th, everything into the 26th or the 25th?
More likely the
26th?
25th since it's our regular schedule.
excuse me?
I would say more likely the 25th since that's our regular schedule.
It is our regular meeting. It's a Monday evening.
We can start a little earlier if you'd like.
Would that work for everybody? We could potentially start, well, so our meeting actually on the 26th, though, our strategic planning meetings, they don't typically start at 7, they typically start earlier.
Right, so we'd have to talk about starting the meeting, the regular meeting earlier, and then recessing into an alternative location. We wouldn't adjourn the meeting, we'd recess to an alternative location, which is common practice. And so if we had a meeting that began at, I'm just picking numbers, 6 o'clock, we could recess into the strategic planning when that meeting concluded. If you have a meeting on the 18th, it's unlikely the 25th is going to be a stacked agenda because the 18th may be a stacked agenda, but the 25th has only been a week worth of time for something to happen. So that agenda is likely to be light. And so you probably could go 6 on the selectmen's meeting, 7 on strategic planning. Is that, I'm just throwing out times, I'll do whatever you need.
I think it's fine.
Any
Fine with
feedback?
me.
Yeah.
6 and 6:45, 5:45, 6:30.
Selectman Valencourt?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. That's good.
So then
We're
our,
going to start the selectmen's meeting at 6.
Yes.
so regularly scheduled meeting is Monday, September 18th, 7 PM in this room. The one after that would be on Monday, September 25th.
Yes.
Beginning at 6 PM in this room. And that will be the same evening that we do strategic planning, so. All good?
Get a motion on the
Thank you.
table?
Do we have to make a motion?
Do we have, because that cannot.
No, no, you the motion to adjourn.
Oh.
So you
So,
missed the motion.
so do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Again.
It's a motion made by Selectman Sedilli. Do I hear a second?
Seconded.
Second by Selectman Nobley. Any discussion? All in favor?
Sure.
Aye.